Fox here with week 3. Hope everyone's having a good time so far. Just to dig right in to the topics, I picked vulnerability and inequality. I think both of them tie in together. They go hand in hand. I know a lot of people picked vulnerability, but to me it seems important. Start off with inequality. You know, times of disaster, people, because of the racial tension that areas feel, people of different race or different ethnicity, sometimes they're treated differently. They don't get the full support or care that other people receive, and that makes them more vulnerable during the times of disaster. And then to go further into vulnerability, I believe there's mental and social vulnerability. Both are a pretty big deal. Socially, I thought it was kind of interesting to see that women are statistically more vulnerable to times of disaster. I know generally men are always, it's stereotypical that men are more hard, but to see it written down was kind of interesting. And then to further go into mental vulnerability, people who are already diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or any kind of mood disorder that have to go through a disaster, that makes them extremely vulnerable. When you already feel like you have nothing, and then you lose something so quickly to disaster, such as like your house or your family or your community, that triggers extreme feelings of grief and anger and helplessness and all the other things that already those people are trying to counteract from, and it just makes it a lot harder on them. Also, pretty much anytime someone goes through a disaster, they're going to remember something, and it's easy for them to develop PTSD. It always leaves some form of memory, and it gets stuck in you. It's easy to count lives lost and economic devastation, but it's hard to quantify psychological impact, and that's something we struggle with. After Hurricane Katrina, the people, they really had a lot of mental health issues that were overlooked. More and more people are being prescribed on psychoactive mood drugs, and a lot of people also turn to drug and alcohol for self-medication. There's a big loss of employment because a lot of people didn't want to pick up. A lot of people didn't want to pick up off their feet and get a job. They weren't resilient to rebuilding their life. And it was also interesting to see domestic violence increases in areas after disaster. I guess it's just the tensions build up, the anger builds up, and unfortunately people get tied up in domestic issues. So that's what interested me. Those were important topics to me. Muddy topics, I guess the vulnerability paradox kind of confused me. They say we don't really know what's going on, and that article really breaks down race, gender, housing, wealth, and other topics on vulnerability. So I didn't really understand what they were trying to, I guess they were just saying we don't have enough knowledge, but I thought there was a good amount, and I'm sure on the internet there's a lot more. And then just to finish this, a question I'd ask should any one person or any group of people receive less support or care just because statistically they're considered less vulnerable? In my opinion, everyone should be treated equally. I understand there's some people that have more issues, but I don't think any person should receive less care just because theoretically they should be able to survive on their own. So if somebody could answer that for me, I'd be interested. Otherwise, hope everyone has a good week, and we'll see you next week.